do not use a wood stove for pressure canning, but I will use it for pressure cooking. It's perfectly safe because there's no glass jars in there, and I can move it around to a cool spot. And we just set the timer like normal. We've got the fan going, got the stove going. Our second year in this house, we bought the Elmira. We found it at cost at a local hardware store where they were just liquidating it, and we came at the right time, and we got this stove for I think $2,500. It has been a workhorse for us. It cooks. We can make cookies, we can make bread, we can do anything we want with this stove, and it is our main source of heat. It heats the upstairs, and anytime the power has gone off due to like winter storms or from somebody running into an electrical pole, this stove keeps our basement from freezing. It keeps our pipes from freezing at 20 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. We can boil water on this. We can boil our storage water on this so that it doesn't taste funny. We can boil water to use for washcloth baths. We can make soup on this. We can do everything we need to in the winter to have a hygienic life on this stove. So let's start off. I live in southeast Idaho where we get temperatures that are well below freezing for about 6 months out of the year. And our last frost date is actually like June 28th. And because of that, we have some not super conventional ways of growing our food and heating our home. So for growing our food, a regular greenhouse just doesn't cut it. We get too cold. So the self-heating greenhouse, our nights are still in the teens at times, Fahrenheit. And everything in here is doing just fine. Currently we have peppers, tomatoes, dill, all sorts of herbs. So I use hotbed greenhouses to grow our food by using manure heated hotbeds to grow food in the winter, even though a normal daytime temperature could be negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit in January and February. In our home heating, we also play around until we find the perfect combination. Last year, we showcased the Liberator rocket stove that is a pellet-fed rocket stove. It is completely electricity free, and it is gravity fed instead of fed with an auger. And so it can heat a space when the power's down without having to go out and chop wood. A lot of people found that very interesting because if you're not used to using an axe, if you're not really sure how to buy regular wood, being able to go in and buy a pallet of pellets and just store them in your garage feels much more secure, feels safer, feels just maybe less intimidating than a stove like the Elmira. The reason we wanted to try the Liberator pellet stove was because we had already owned and tried rocket stoves, regular rocket stoves that burn cordwood. Those stoves were made by Darwin over at the Honey Do Carpenter, and they're aircrete insulated rocket stoves. They're incredibly efficient. They're amazing.
Conventional rocket mass heaters are built out of masonry because of the high temps that are required in order to have a complete combust. Rocket stoves can melt metal. So, when we moved into our tiny little Airbnb cabin, we had a problem that a normal rocket stove would fall through the floor because they're so heavy. Darwin over at the Honey Do Carpenter reinvented rocket stoves by using aircrete as the insulative property to get the burn chamber hot enough for a full combust. And then he created an insert inside the aircrete that was a forge blend of concrete to keep the stove from melting. It was brilliant. So this is a super light, super efficient stove so that you can move it to where you want. Originally, it was in the Airbnb, but after that, we put it into our house through a window to show that in emergency situations, you can just pop the stove in and use it without having to have a full chimney. And then after that, we put it into our normal chimney to show that it could just be used as a regular heating and cooking stove. It also comes with an oven attachment. Now, the reason we don't have this stove in our house now is that a homemade stove affects your homeowner's insurance. That is the reason why we decided to try the Liberator pellet stove, is because it is UL certified, made and manufactured in the United States in a way that it acts like a normal conventional wood burning stove on your homeowner's insurance.
The scary part of wood stoves is not just getting on the roof, but the creosote. What creosote is it's a buildup that you get from your smoke in your chimney. And the reason it's scary is because it still has oil in it. It still has oil in it. It still has unburned particles of carbon. And so if you have, like, for instance, a day with really high winds and you try to start a fire in your chimney and you get any of those flames that go up the chimney a little bit, that creosote will catch fire. It turns into a torch, and the temperatures get so high that you can actually have the integrity of your chimney, the integrity of your stove is compromised, and you can break your chimney, you can break your stove, and your house will light on fire, especially if you have a lot of cinders that are going up the chimney. Now, in our area, the reason that we have such a big problem with creosote is that we only have softwoods here, resinous things like pine, Douglas fir. That's the only thing we have to burn here. We could burn cottonwood too, and I think we have black walnut that we have in this area, but that's few and far between, and it stinks a lot when you burn it. So we have not optimum wood. But if you're going to be burning wood, you don't want to be pulling wood in from another state, because there goes your sustainability, there goes your local sourcing, there goes all the good things that go with living the homesteading life. So that's where the rocket mass heater comes in.
Right off the bat. I mean, it's already sucking it.
Yeah.
And that's not typical with most rocket stoves. Most rocket stoves, they have to put a candle in there and shut the door and warm up the whole system before they can ever get it to move. And that's just not the case here. But did you hear that?
That was fast.
Did you hear that? When we first started it, after it had been burning for 20 minutes or so, you could open the flap and look, and some of the wood wasn't even charred yet. But it was rocketing the whole time. It rocketed from about 30 seconds to 1 minute. You could hear it ramping up, and after 1 minute, it was just
Yeah,
going.
It was running off of the gases, not off of the wood, and there was plenty of gases in the small amount of wood that was on fire. That it wasn't consuming the rest of wood. It was kind of bizarre to watch it, that it's just running off the gases. It's not actually running off the wood.
Yep. I'm alive and well in District 13. So guys, when I'm burning wet wood in the stove and the gasification chamber is just gassing off and pushing out all the water and steam and wood gas, it's kind of interesting, and I want to show you. I'm going to put a piece of wet wood in there. Okay, we'll take this wet piece.
Are you ready, man?
The reason that we wanted to try the Liberator Stove, even though we loved the Honey Do Carpenter stove, was because the Liberator Stove was UL certified and manufactured in a way that you don't have to worry about your homeowner's insurance when you put it in your house.
All right, that sound is not the fan. That sound is the rocket stove running on pellets. And the basement is warm. We had absolutely zero problem with smoking. When we decided to light this with the cordwood instead of the pellets, this is about the biggest wood that you can use. Let the pellets die out, use all these pellets up, and then while the chimney is still warm, go ahead and pull the pellet apparatus out. Where did we put it? I'm just going to put it over here. Okay, we've got some issues with smoke coming out. Alright, now you see we don't have any smoke. First little lesson I learned. I had a piece of wood that was not descending. So you need to look and make sure that your wood is actually in contact with the coals or your fire will go out. I didn't have to restart it. I just had to bump the wood so that it shifted down and was in contact again.
So we received the Liberator Stove from the manufacturer. It is an American-made stove, and it was an incredible gift. They wanted us to review it, and it was an incredible gift. And we put it through its paces, and as an emergency stove, it's incredible. The Liberator Stove also burns cordwood. It does burn cordwood, but you have to split it into incredibly fine, much finer than anything you'd ever put in this. What you need is a kindling splitter, and you pretty much need to have somebody sitting in front of that stove just knocking out kindling for a few hours a day in order to keep that stove fed with that kind of size of wood. So unless you know a cabinet maker shop who's willing to just give you all of his scraps, you're going to be spending a lot of time if you're trying to heat your house with the Liberator and you're using cordwood. In an emergency situation, you will not care. You will set one of your kids down and you will have them splitting that kindling and feeding it to the Liberator, and it will keep you warm, and you'll do it on shifts. It is totally doable, and you would be grateful for it. The Liberator Stove is gravity fed, which means that you cannot control the speed at which the pellets drop onto the fire. You have a constant flow. And because of that, you can go through 1 bag of pellets in about 8 hours, is what we found as we burned those pellets. The heat that's put out by 1 bag of pellets will heat our home in really, really cold weather. So 2,100 square foot home, including the garage, that pellet stove, if we kept it loaded up with pellets, would go through 1 bag of pellets in about 8 hours, and it would keep the whole house warm during that time. In order to keep the house warm at night too, we would have needed to have gone through 3 bags of pellets a day. Currently, our bags of pellets here, if we can get them on sale, are $6.50 a bag. That's a lot for us because we're used to free heat in the form of cordwood. Because we already heat primarily with an off-grid, non-electric heat source, we did not need another non-electric heat source. So we found that we loved the pellets with the Liberator Stove and the ease of using the Liberator Stove so much that when somebody offered us a free pellet stove, a conventional pellet stove with an auger and a fan and a plug-in that needed electricity, we jumped at it. All right, hopefully you guys can still hear me. This is our free pellet stove that we got from my father-in-law because they moved into a new house and he thought that we might like to use it. So for chilly spring weather and for chilly fall weather, a pellet stove is incredibly nice. It lets you kind of ease into winter in a gentle, flowing, comfortable way. And if you set it up in a basement so that the heat can just go up to the next floor, it does a really good job of taking the edge off, even on levels that it's not physically on. I have our little eco fan on top of the pellet stove just to show you the difference between this stove and the Liberator as far as the way that the stove acts. This stove, I can touch it and it's going, and it's a pleasant heat, but it's more like what you get from a central heating system. It's very soft heat, touchable heat. It does not turn my little heat fan because the stove itself is not hot. You can't cook on this stove. No cooking on it. And if the electricity does go out, you cannot run this. If you tried to run it with a generator, it would be very, very foolish to run it with a generator. I don't know how foolish it would be to try and run it with solar panels. This stove does not pull a lot of electricity. You're pretty much just running an auger occasionally and a fan. I have had loads of people tell me, pellet stoves are great for emergencies because all you have to do is turn on the generator. In our part of the country, we have -20°F temperatures for weeks and weeks. What if you can't get your fuel for your generator? And how much would it cost to get fuel for that generator? And how long would that generator run to then run your pellet stove before you ran out of fuel and you had to go out and fill it up again? Are you getting up in the middle of the night to fill the generator? Aren't there other more important things that your generator could fuel? So even though we decided to put a conventional pellet stove in our basement after using the Liberator, we're doing that because sometimes there's electricity. And during those times, we thought the pellets were really fun. This one, you get a little bit of a wood smell. With the Liberator stove, you did not get a wood smell, you didn't get any smoke. You could not tell that we had a wood stove, a pellet stove, any kind of stove going in the house. So it's very incognito. Our wood stove upstairs is not incognito. It's not incognito at all. You know we have a wood stove because we got smoke coming out the chimney. So make sure to go check out Liberator Stove. Make sure to go check out Darwin at the Honey Do Carpenter for his rocket stove that is a homemade stove. He has plans for it that you can use to heat your own home with these amazing little stoves. And you can go check out the Elmira. I'm trying to think who carries Elmira's. Layman's. I think the Layman's catalog carries Elmira's. We didn't get it through the catalog. We got it here locally again at a hardware store for the cost of the stove. We spent like $2,500 on it instead of $8,000. And I think that's it for now. So hopefully that's helpful. And we'll talk to you later.
Out here chopping the wood.
I just walked out the door to the sound of persistent thumping to find that Paige had fetched a hatchet.
Mom, it's okay if I go get
He's out here splitting wood.
Mom, can
How old are you again, child?
7.
7. Okay, I really don't want you to cut your finger or your sister's finger off, okay?
Can I go get a hatchet to cut wood?
No, I think when you're
Well,
7.
I need a hatchet to cut a big log. What's hard for me to kill with log?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, Mom!
Honey, I'm not going to let you have a hatchet. Paigey, make sure not to hit the concrete, okay? So what did you girls do?
We stacked wood high in this box and in this box. In both boxes.
So you brought in Russian olive
And pine.
and pine and some split wood too. All in your little wheelbarrows. Give me 5.
That's the wheelbarrow. Pretty good
job.
and handy.
This is one of their paid jobs. This way Mom always has wood for cooking, and we can grab wood at night when it gets chilly, huh?
Uh-huh.
Keeps our house nice and warm. It is possible to overcook things in your oven.
This one was a cheesecake.
This one was a cheesecake and now it looks more like a brownie. Well, no, actually it's perfect.
It looks burnt.
It's not. It's perfect.
Well, it looked like it was like burnt.
It did look like it was burnt, but it's not.
It smells like s'mores. Yeah.
It does smell like s'mores. It looks delicious. Okay, we're going to let it cool down, and then once it's cooler, we'll put it in the fridge.